Peach Blossom Det. Chapter 6. Sure enough, the first thing Minga Xing Jun when I reached the roof was to hypocritically ask after this immortal lord's injuries. I answered with a smile, Xing Jun, you are the one who arranged for me to receive the beating. Whether or not my injuries healed is in your hands, so why ask such an unnecessary question? Minga Xing Jun responded with a dry laugh. Then he cut to the chase. 5 days from now, at the nighttime hour of Hai, Shan Shengling will arrive at the Prince of the Eastern Commandery's manor to abduct Mu Ruian. He will take a stab wound from Li Siming's sword after blocking a blow meant for Mu Ruian and flee alone. Oh? Doesn't Li Siming love Mu Ruian? How could he bear to strike him with a sword? Even if he wanted to stab someone, it would be Shan Shengling. Minga Xing Jun weighed his beard in his hand. Yuan Jun, the love of mortals is the most difficult thing to gauge with common sense. Every love is different. There are some who lose regard for even themselves in the name of love, and others who would turn to hatred, and see that love destroyed if they can't obtain it. Now this immortal lord understood. This one stab was designed to draw out Nanming Dijun's earth-shaking love with this immortal lord's ruthlessness. One stab, and Tianchu and Nanming's love would deepen, while Tianchu's hatred for me would intensify. Very well, then. Ruthless it is. If he hates me, then so be it. In any case, what this immortal lord was doing was nothing good. I had never expected anything good to come of it. It was really nice of the Jade Emperor to give me the one chance to stab Nanming Dijun. He must have heard me saying in a fit of pique back at the heavenly court that I really wanted to stab Nanming Dijun. Wise be the Jade Emperor. After I was done listening to old man Minga, I gladly made for my chamber when I suddenly remembered something. Tianchu's persistent coughs are giving me sleepless nights. Is it possible to treat his illness? Conflicting feelings crossed Minga Xing Jun's face. The Jade Emperor has decreed that no immortals of the heavenly court are to interfere with the will of heaven with their powers. If there is a way in the mortal world to cure him, can I do him a favor and treat him? I asked. I get a headache every time I hear that sound. Minga stroked his beard and considered it for a moment. This immortal lord added, the Jade Emperor said before that Tianchu and Nanming are punished this lifetime to suffer all sorts of love trials. His tuberculosis does not count as a love tribulation, so there's no harm in treating it. Minga finally relented. Then so be it. But you mustn't use your powers. Struck rather speechless, I managed to say, in my current situation, it would not be convenient for me to use my powers regardless. Minga chuckled. I admit, these past days have been hard on you. The old man did this immortal lord a favor and acquiesced on this matter, then asked me to send his regards on to Hengwen Qingjun. Only then did he ride away on the wind, but he had just begun his ascent when he came back down again. This immortal lord was about to return to my bedchamber myself when he yelled, Song Yao Yuan Jun, hold on a moment. Panting hard, he fished out a bronze 8 trigrams tally that he handed to this immortal lord. This object is called the Spirit Detachment Tally. It is a treasure from Taishang Lao Jun, specially prepared for you. You and Tianchu's reincarnation are both in the Prince of Eastern Commandery's manor, and now Hengwen Qingjun lives here too. I fear mountain spirits and wild monsters will sniff you out, looking for trouble. With this item, you can manifest your true form in an emergency. However, it can only be used 3 times a month. Yuan Jun, use it wisely. I accepted the tally. Only 3 times. That's a tad too little. But Minga was unimpressed with this immortal lord's picky attitude, and after explaining how to use it and no shortage of nagging he rode a gust of wind back to the heavenly court. I repossessed Li Siming's body. Mu Ruian had already fallen asleep. His breathing at night was weak and shallow. It was not easy to grow up without illness or pain, but it was also not easy to grow up with such an affluent life and still be as weak as him. How exactly had he been living these past 20 or so years? I had not shut my eyes for long when he awoke with another cough. I helped him up and patted his back to soothe his fits, then got off the bed to feel for the teapot on the table. It was still warm, so I poured a cup for him to drink. He slept a little more soundly after falling asleep. I pulled his quilt up and tucked it tightly under the pillow. Only then did I close my eyes for the rest of the night. The prince was not in the manor the next day, which made it convenient for this immortal lord to go looking for Heng Wen in the morning. Not finding him in his chamber, I scoured the area until I spotted him from afar, sitting in the back garden's octagonal pavilion. A vague shape squirmed at his side, and as I neared, it turned out to be Jining squatting on a stone stool, clinging and twisting on Heng Wen. I had been wondering why he had not been in my courtyard lately. As it turned out, he had turned to pestering Heng Wen. Jinchu, who was sitting all well behaved on the other side, boldly tugged on Heng Wen's sleeve with a hand. This immortal lord approached the pavilion, only to hear Jining asking Heng Wen, "Mr. Zhao, if there's any part I don't know when reciting articles from memory in the future, can I ask you?" Heng Wen was still holding a book in his hand. Apparently, he had been reading when the little brats came to pester him. I took 2 more steps forward. Heng Wen had yet to answer when Jining continued with a grin, "Mister, I learned a martial arts skill, do you want to try it out? You even know martial arts?" Heng Wen laughed. "That's very impressive. How about showing me a move?" Jinchu looked anxious as he tugged at Heng Wen's sleeve, while Jining's little paws felt their way to Heng Wen's shoulders. "Mister, I learned this move from little uncle. It's called air channeling." Just as he moved his face forward, this immortal lord took a sudden stride forward and pulled the little scourge this close to touching the tip of Heng Wen's nose away and set him on the ground. I growled, "Little uncle has some business to attend to with Mr. Zhao. Go play elsewhere." Not once in thousands of years had this immortal lord ever taken any liberties with Heng Wen Qingjun, and this little brat nearly got his way. Jining ran off wailing, while Jinchu reluctantly released his grip on Heng Wen's sleeve and followed, his head lowered. I heaved a long sigh of relief. Thank goodness they're gone. Heng Wen set down his book and turned his attention to me. "The child's just playful. Why are you trying to split hairs with him?" I grinned at that. He went on to ask what I wanted from him with a smile. Heng Wen must have been in a very good mood today. "Nothing, really," I answered, and told him about Minga's latest instructions. Minga Xingjun has the tendency to be lazy and simplify things to make writing in his book easier, Heng Wen quipped. His words don't fully convey his intent, and their ambiguous interpretations may allow for new destinies to unfold. I only hope he will write a little more clearly this time. There'd better be no further complications. His words reopened this immortal lord's old wounds, and I promptly chimed in. That's right. Who knows what he wrote in his book? It better not end up with Nanming stabbing me instead. That'd be the grossest injustice. Smiling faintly at that, Heng Wen replied, "Who knows, maybe Tianzhu will be moved when you collapse to the ground bleeding. As you yourself said, Tianzhu has always had a heart of compassion for the weak." This immortal lord shuddered. Heng Wen set his hand on my shoulder. "I was just trying to spook you. Don't worry. I'll be there too, so how would you be hurt?" "I'm not afraid he'd hurt me," I said with a wry smile. "I'm just afraid that the date Minga mentioned is not all that accurate. He said it'd take place 4 to 5 days later, but it might very well happen tonight." That very night, this immortal lord lay in bed with eyes open as wide as copper bells for fear that Shan Shengling would make his move. They stayed open until after the 3rd watch of the night, but other than Tianzhu coughing, nothing exceptional happened. Unable to hold up any longer, I fell asleep. For the next 2 days in a row, this immortal lord sought out renowned physicians who could treat Tianzhu. And every night, I retired with the fear that Shan Shengling would burst in ahead of schedule. Living in constant vigilance drained me, but my anxiety-induced wakefulness made it easier for me to soothe Mu Ruian's coughs with water. I was feeding him tonics daily to nurse him back to health, and his nighttime coughing receded some. His hands, too, grew warmer. One night, after bringing him water, I returned to bed to a soft thank you from his spot on the pillow. For whatever reason, this immortal lord wanted to shed bitter tears in response. On the third night after Old Man Minga's update, midnight settled moonless, dark, and ominously windy. This immortal lord heard rustling and unusual movement outside the window. Was this immortal lord really right about Old Man Minga, and Shan Shengling had entered the prince's manor ahead of schedule? I held the copper 8 trigrams tally in both palms before my chest, and silently recited the incantation. In an instant, my celestial form broke free to hover in the air. Quietly, I snuck out. Outside, wafts of stench permeated the air along with the wind. In the courtyard, an indistinct human figure drifted among the flowering shrubs. Now and then, a bewitching laughter rang out like the miserable howls of the cold wind. It was the voice of a woman. So, this immortal lord had guessed wrong. Old Man Minga, that jinx of a mouth. It was not Shan Shengling who had come, but a demon. And with this stench, it was a fox demon. The vixen was heading toward Heng Wen's bedchamber. She was clearly a little feeble with not even 1,000 years of cultivation, and she still dared to throw herself into the hands of an immortal. This immortal lord was disinclined to expend any effort chasing after her, so I simply teleported myself before Heng Wen's door and waited for her to deliver herself to me. The vixen was quick and alert, and as soon as it saw this immortal lord, it said with a charming smile, "Oh, my, there really are a lot of immortals in this courtyard." According to the rules of the heavenly court, these kinds of minor demons could not be instantly killed on sight. We had to first reason with them. Thus, I proceeded in a quiet voice. "Demon, seeing that you have the heart to cultivate the Dao, this immortal lord shall not beat you back into your original form. If you can abandon the evil path and cultivate the righteous path, you may very well attain the Dao after some spiritual trials and tribulations and enter the heavenly court as an immortal." "Oh, my," the vixen exclaimed, "I knew old Daoists were naggy, but I didn't think a young immortal like you would be such a nag too. This humble slave only wishes to tryst a night with that immortal lord in there, and imbue myself with some immortal nectar. Forget it, it seems I have been beaten to it. I am not wasting another breath on you. Let's not meet again." Then she twisted at the waist and bore south in a black blur. I raised a hand. A flick of my fingers, and from the black blur came a howl of misery. I had shown her plenty enough mercy. Whether or not she could survive on this last breath of hers depended on her luck. Heng Wen's bedchamber was heavy with demonic energy. I was just about to break down the door when I suddenly remembered, I had left Tianchu alone in our chamber. As the reincarnation of a Star Lord, there was no doubt he would attract unwanted attention from evil beings. Heng Wen's divine powers far surpassed mine, and there was no commotion in his chamber, so he must have been fine. I said through the seam of the door, "Heng Wen, handle it yourself for the time being. I'll come back to help you after I've checked on Tianchu." I zapped right back to my bedchamber in Han Court. Mu Ruian was sound asleep on the bed. Fortunately, nothing was amiss. I drew up a divine barrier to secure him further, and only then did I return to Heng Wen's bedchamber. The stench was even thicker now, and the demonic aura before Heng Wen's bedchamber was intense. Still, there was no sign of activity within. This could not bode well. I concealed my breathing and entered. Amidst the glowing red light that bathed me, there stood a figure with Heng Wen in his arms. The figure breathed, "Ever since I've laid eyes on you, I've been pining for you day and night, unable to help myself. I know only death awaits a demon like me who encounters an immortal. In coming here, I've no expectation to come out of it alive. I only hope," the tip of a tongue gently licked Heng Wen's ear. "I only hope you can allow me to spend one night. Do you know what exactly the most delightful deed in this world tastes like?" Even after hearing all this, I made no move. I was stupefied. Long hair as silver as white snow. A pair of slanted, bewitching eyes. It was a white fox spirit. The white robe the fox wore was wide open at the chest, exposing perfectly sculpted pectoral muscles. Devastating. Even more devastating. This was a male fox. Despite my stupefaction, I revealed myself. Furball, what are you doing? This fox was a real romantic, treating this immortal lord as invisible as air as he held Heng Wen in his arms. He stroked Heng Wen with his paws in a display meant for this immortal lord. Heng Wen, on the other hand, looked clear-minded and invigorated. He had not been restrained. I should have known from the instant I entered that his eyes were fixed on the fox and the fox alone. Until I had shown myself, he had looked nowhere else, and let him do as he pleased with his paws and mouth. Could Heng Wen have taken a fancy to Furball? Was all that worth it? The fox spirit didn't look half bad, but how could it compare to this immortal lord's elegance? Fox demons had red phoenix eyes that bewitched whether they were male or female, but there were still differences. On a woman's face, they were the beautiful, bewitching eyes of the red phoenix, ravishing and captivating, the stuff of poems and paintings. On a man's face, they were gallant and glaring, red like the jujube complexion of the second master, Guan Yu. I admired the fox's guts. I did not intend to strike him with such a heavy blow, but as I prepared to give this fox an inch, he took a mile. The more he touched, the closer he came to unmentionable spots. Without a second thought, I recited a lightning spell, and a flash of heavenly light struck at the crown of the fox's head. The fox, having several years of cultivation under his belt, dodged, and deflected the rest with a charge of demonic energy. He blocked a significant portion, but still staggered back a step. He coughed out a mouthful of black blood, gasping for breath as he leaned against the table. I reached Heng Wen's side and lit an oil lamp. The fox raised a pair of begrudging eyes at Heng Wen before closing them in resignation. So, you were using me as a front. Never mind. I'm content with having been close to you just this once. He opened them again to look at me. Go ahead. Heng Wen took a step until he was in front of me. You are not at fault for this. You may leave. It was I who had the idea to play a trick on this immortal lord earlier, that was why I used you. On second thought, now that I've put myself in your shoes, it was really wrong of me to treat you like this. The fox wiped the blood from his mouth and slowly straightened himself, eyes sorrowful. You are teasing me again, aren't you? A demon like me is nothing but a furball in human form, just as the immortal lord said. You must have found those things I did to you vile and filthy. When I came, I never expected to make it out alive. I am content with dying by your hands. Such moving words. This immortal lord could not help but sigh. Heng Wen took another step forward until he must have been 30 centimeters away from the fox and said gently, I was actually quite happy when you said all those words to me. For several thousand years, no one had ever said those kinds of words to me. I can't answer your feelings, but it's not because I'm an immortal. He laughed softly. You've done nothing particularly significant, and for that, I apologize. You should go back and nurse your wounds. The fox's pointed ears quivered, and he said in a hushed tone, a few days ago, when you descended to the mortal world, you landed next to the mountain where I was cultivating. It was originally because I coveted the immortal aura on you, but when I saw you up close, I could not forget you, and that was why I tailed you here. I presumed too much tonight. I understand what you mean by those words you said earlier. It's just that, eyes that brimmed with longing gazed deeply at Heng Wen. If my cultivation comes to fruition and I become an immortal, can I meet you again in the recesses of the clouds and have a drink with you to my heart's content? Heng Wen nodded. Yes. You have my word. Be sure to remember that my title is Heng Wen Qing Jun. The fox's eyes lit up. So you are the Heng Wen Qing Jun who presides over the literary arts. May I trouble Qing Jun to remember my name, Xian Li, as well. This immortal lord stepped up with a broad smile. This humble one is Song Yao Yuan Jun. If after you've attained immortality, you would like to seek revenge for the blow tonight, you can come looking for me, too. The fox's ears twitched. He did not even raise his paws. I must have wounded him deeply when I called him verbal in front of Heng Wen. This immortal lord had always been magnanimous, there was no need for me to come down on this verbal any further. As he made to leave, I intercepted him with a reminder that needed to be said. Verbal, oh, right, it's young Master Xian. You are fond of the same sex and so would not harass ordinary girls nor cultivate the demonic art of harnessing yin essence to nourish your yang essence. This is a good thing. Perhaps it was also precisely because of this that you have an affinity with immortality. But you must never, ever do evil deeds like harassing pretty and delicate men. Did you know that absorbing yang essence to nourish yang essence would be detrimental to you? The road of cultivation stresses maintaining a heart pure and free of worldly desires. To be pure in spirit is to possess clarity of one's vital energy, and the fox transformed into the wind and left, leaving this immortal lord's unfinished words buried in the night. Rarely did this immortal lord expound the Dao, yet he would not listen to my teachings. With a raise of his brows, Heng Wen quipped, "You spend all day rambling about how you became an immortal by chance, yet it turns out you're quite persuasive when you talk about the art of cultivation." "That's all I've been hearing for the several thousand years I've been in heaven," I refuted. "Verbal has taken enough advantage of you tonight. Add my teachings to it, and that is enough to build off of for the next 100 years or so." Waiting on Mu Ruian had become a habit, so seeing the front flaps of Heng Wen's clothing still pried slightly open, I could not help but reach out to close them. "I've been by your side for several thousand years, and now even share your bed every night. Yet a verbal beat me to all the acts I have yet to commit with you. That stings." Heng Wen's smiling gaze bore into me. "In that case, how about you and I do something that the fox did not get to do?" Remaining by my side, his face slowly inched closer. Tender lips suddenly made contact with this immortal lord's skin, and I shuddered. Good grief, behave. The Jade Emperor and Minga could very well be watching from heaven right now. But some things only allow you a fleeting moment of clarity. It was like being submerged in a lake, it did not make sense for the clothes not to get wet. Heng Wen was unfamiliar with this kind of endeavor, and he nibbled and licked as he pleased, looking increasingly alluring. I could not help but embrace him tightly and take the lead. Those soft lips were a deep pool of water that I would willingly drown in. When we parted, Heng Wen slightly opened his eyes misty under the light. Those moist, red lips drew into a smile. All of a sudden, he moved in close to my ear and breathed, "So that's how it tastes like." These words would really be the death of me. I was about to get as restless as that fox and touch my tongue to his ear. The body in my arms shifted slightly. Fortunately, this immortal lord's years of cultivation won over, and my mind cleared just in time. Grasping Heng Wen by the shoulders, I pushed him a short distance away. Heng Wen furrowed his brows. "What's wrong?" With a bitter smile, I said, "Carry on, and we'd be sent up to the immortal execution terrace." Heng Wen backed off a little. "If that was the case," he argued, "you'd have long been taken back to the immortal execution terrace and hacked into 8 pieces considering all those breaths of life you've channeled to Tianchu." This immortal lord silently poured a cup of cool tea and downed it. Heng Wen sat on the edge of the bed and retrieved his worn folding fan. "It's just a moment of fun. It's not like it's for real. Even if we really did do something, couldn't we say we were performing the art of dual cultivation?" Silently still, I set down the teacup, and Heng Wen continued, "No wonder you always look so dejected whenever you mention your fate of eternal solitude. It turns out that there is no shortage of marvels when it comes to love in the mortal world." He appeared to be fascinated, and this immortal lord was racked with terror. "Qing Jun," I said, "you and I descended to the mortal world to set up love trials for others. On no account must you allow complications to arise, much less end up paying the price for it. If you get involved in such a thing, know that its cost is far more excruciating than suffering from any other brutal torture in the world. Heng Wen's clear eyes were fixed on me. Don't worry. I was just a little curious and wanted to get a feel for this business. You, on the other hand, talk about it like you are being tormented right now. It couldn't be that while the heavenly court's back was turned, you yourself have been moved by mortal love. How could that be? The laugh I released was dry indeed. I was merely feeling sentimental over my past. I bid Heng Wen good night, and returned to my bedchamber. I repossessed Li Siming's body, reckoning that it would not be long before the day broke. Tianchu slept soundly. Perhaps the divine barrier I set up had melded with his immortal aura and calmed his mind. I rolled over in bed. It would be a miracle if I could sleep after kissing Heng Wen earlier. Let's see. The first time I saw Heng Wen in the heavenly court. How did that go again? This immortal lord had been rather nostalgic of late. When I thought back to the first time I met Heng Wen, I recalled having had the feeling that this Qing Jun was even more ostentatious than Tianzhi Xing Jun. Indeed, Heng Wen Qing Jun's standing was even higher than Tianzhi Xing Jun's to begin with. I had just paid Tianzhi Xing Jun an official visit and gotten a cold nod of his head in return. The heavenly envoy had guided me away, saying that we were going to call on Heng Wen Qing Jun. The heavenly envoy filled me in. This Qing Jun presided over acclaimed literary figures as well as their works of literature, and was of equal rank with several Dijun, or emperor lords. This humble one had listened with rapt attention and committed it to memory. Just as we were about to arrive at Heng Wen Qing Jun's Weiyiwen Palace, we saw a crowd of immortals heading the other way. The heavenly envoy had said, "Unfortunately for you, it seems that Heng Wen Qing Jun has something to attend to out there." The immortals were crowding around some figures a distance away. The envoy pointed out a few of them. The two at the sides were the civil and military Kuei Xing, the three behind were Zhang and Wen Jun and the two immortal lords, Wen Chong and Wen Ming. The one in the middle was Heng Wen Qing Jun. I looked ahead and only saw a figure in light purple gradually receding into the distance. Graceful and elegant, the length of his back bore some resemblance to Tianzhi Xing Jun's, except that I had met Tianzhi Xing Jun face to face, but had not even caught a glimpse of this Heng Wen Qing Jun. All I could do was hand my visiting card to an attendant boy outside Weiyiwen Palace and continue to call on the other fellow immortals. Several days later, I was just about done calling on the myriad list of immortals in the heavenly court. I ventured out every day to roam and familiarize myself with the paths, and that one particular day, I went to a lotus pond not far from the Peach of Immortality garden. The lotuses of the heavenly court bloomed all seasons, each standing gracefully tall on the water's surface. Clouds drifted by the pond, and the fragrance of lotuses wafted over in waves, drawing one to take one step at a time along the edge of the pond and revel in the sight. When I reached the inner reaches of the clouds, I saw a piece of paper spread out on a large rock. Someone who was partially crouching was wielding his brush, presumably to paint this pond of lotuses. I moved in closer within. "Excuse me." The man turned his head aside, the brush whipping around in his hand. He exclaimed in surprise as splotches of ink splattered over my robe. He hastened to his feet and cupped his hands, smiling as he said, "That was careless of me. Sorry, sorry." I was momentarily dumbstruck, not by the splatter of ink on my clothes, but by the lotus-like elegance of this man. At the time, he had a youthful air about him, his hair loosely let down behind his head with only a ribbon securing it toward the end. He wore a hemp-colored cotton robe, with the corners tucked in and the cuffs of his sleeves rolled up. I guessed that he was either an attendant under the command of some immortal lords, or an immortal without an official post like me. He apologized, looking truly contrite. I hurriedly responded, "It's fine, it's fine. I was the one who was rude in the first place and kept you back from your painting." I shook my robe, then continued with a smile, "As it is often said in the mortal world, he who is tinged with ink, is endowed with 3 days of literary scent. What's more is that this is divine ink. One could consider this the greatest refinement." His eyes lit up. Oh? Is that what the mortals say? I've never seen you before. Are you newly ascended from the mortal world? Indeed, I answered. He smiled. That's wonderful. I was born in heaven and have never been to the mortal world. Please tell me more about the mortal world in the future. While calling on my fellow immortals those past days, I had spoken nothing but polite civilities. Finding the words of this younger immortal whom I could have easily mistaken for an attendant to be quite amicable, I said, of course. However, I tend to ramble on and on once I start, so please do not be annoyed after you've listened long enough. His smile widened. I looked down at the painting on the rock. Just a few strokes, but already the outline of a lotus flower could be seen. It was charming and vivid. My praise was sincere. What a marvelous painting! He brightened. If you like this painting, how about I give it to you when it's finished as my apology for the robe? I couldn't wish for anything better, I answered. I would be reaping again. Seeing him crouch down, roll his sleeves, and prepare the ink to draw again, I said, my being here will likely distract you from your painting, so I shall take my leave. When I turned, I heard him calling out for me to hold on a moment. I looked back, and he turned his head to look at me fully. What's your name? This humble one is Song Yao, I replied. Song, as from the states of Qi, Chu, Yan, Zhao, Han, Wei, Song, Yao, as formed with the characters Wang and Zhao. I left after giving my name. Never would I have expected that he would appear the next day, in the palace back garden that the Jade Emperor bestowed upon me that very night. With a smile, he greeted me, Song Yao. Seeing my astonishment, he pulled a scroll from his sleeve. The painting has already been mounted. I'm here to deliver it to you. Entering by the front door and having my arrival announced by all those attendants is a hassle, so I just came in through the back garden. He sure did not stand on ceremony, climbing over my walls the way he did. I took the scroll. I had just been lamenting over my latest gift, 2 bottles of exquisite wine from the Jade Emperor and no one to share them with. I invited him to have a drink with me. He did not decline, in fact, he nodded in agreement. So, I set 2 plates of heavenly fruits and snacks on the stone table in the back garden, where we toasted each other under the colors of the night. The night passed such that, out of the blue, I found myself sighing with emotion. Had this been in the mortal world, we'd be able to see the luminous moon above as we drink. The human figure, illuminated by its light, forms a pair of shadows. Truly a splendid way to spend our time. Now that I'm in the heavenly court, I can only run to the entrance of the moon palace if I wish to see the moon, and even so, I fear that the other immortals will think that I'm trying to take liberties with Chang'e if I go over one time too many. What does the moon look like in the mortal world? He asked. I gestured with my hands. Waxing in the first quarter and waning in the last quarter. It's round only 2 days, on the 15th and 16th of every month. It reaches its fullest on the 15th of the 8th month of every year, that's why those in the mortal world call that day the Mid-Autumn Festival, or Mid-Autumn. But even at its fullest, it's only as big as this plate. During the Mid-Autumn Festival, everyone in the mortal world would take in the moon as they drink wine under osmanthus trees. We drank cup after cup and I spoke bit by bit. He listened with relish, and I spoke with gusto. We drank until we were dead drunk. In the end, we simply rolled onto a stone out in the back garden and fell asleep. When the sky was bright on the second day, so bright I reckoned Maori Sing Jun had already been on duty at the eastern heavenly gate for 2 hours. I woke up, eyes still bleary with sleep. He smiled at me with disheveled clothes and hair. I had a great time, drinking to my heart's content last night. Still unfamiliar with the comely sight of him, I took a moment to respond. Indeed, indeed. I smiled. It has been the first time I had such a wonderful time drinking since I set foot in the heavenly court. He straightened his clothes. Unfortunately, I have to take my leave now. I didn't return to the residence last night, and they might be looking all over for me. It was then that I remembered. Oh, right. I can't believe I forgot to ask your name. Since he mentioned returning to the residence, might he really be the junior to some exalted immortals? Oh, yes, he answered. I forgot to tell you, since you didn't ask. I was born in heaven, so I have no surname or given name, only a title I was born with. My title is Heng Wen Qing Jun. You can just call me Heng Wen. I stood by our bed of stone, dumbfounded. The sky had tentatively brightened. Once more, I rolled over in bed so that I was lying on my back. Sigh, back in those days, Heng Wen Qing Jun's divine powers were still rather raw at the edge, so his stature was still a little lower than this immortal lord's, and he still had with him the pure and naive air of a youth. Several thousand years had passed since then. Compared to yesteryear, the Heng Wen Qing Jun now lying in the side chamber was. Ah, the passage of time, the passage of time. This immortal lord turned to the side and scrutinized that soundly sleeping face on the pillow. For several thousands of years, Tianchi Xing Jun had hardly changed a bit. Even if he had now reincarnated into this illness-wrecked Mu Ruian, those calmly shut eyes on that delicate face still belonged to the Tianchi of the past. As I stared and stared, a headache began to creep up on me. Nanming Dijun should be here either tomorrow or the day after. Oh Tianchi, your lover is coming. I never once got an inkling of their illicit affair in the heavenly court. When those exalted lords met in the palace hall, one of them would always be pulling an awe-inspiring expression while the other would be putting on a frosty expression. In truth, however, a tempest had been raging deep in the recesses of both their hearts. How hard was it for them? How terrible they must have felt! Gazing at Tianchi's sleeping face, I smiled pleasantly and tucked him in again. How would it all play out when Tianchi and Nanming met in the manor garden right under this immortal lord's nose? End chapter.